Are you ready, Dave?
And we're live. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Karen McInnes. I'm the president of the Long Beach City Council, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's work session of the City Council. With that, I'd like to hand it over to City Manager Donna Gaydon.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's presentation will be headed by Mr. John McNally.
So good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight, both council, consultants, potential vendors, and members of the public to discuss what is obviously a critically important issue for the city. And that being potential installation of parking meters in the central business district of the city. This has been a project that a number of staff have been working on really for the better part of a year. So I'd be remiss if I didn't start out by thanking Commissioner Walsh and other members of the police department, Controller Resnick, Dave Frazier, our city clerk, Corporation Counsel's office, both Joseph Lupo and Rich Berrios, and members from our purchasing department for really carrying the water and trying to get this right over these past many months. So as I mentioned, installation of parking meters in our central business district is an absolutely critical issue to the future of the city. It has been a solution that has been recommended not by just the city's financial consultants, but by the New York State Financial Restructuring Board, which they did in a report and an analysis of the city's finances in 2019. And just last year, they awarded the city $500,000 to go towards the upfront cost of the installation of said meters. While it is recognized by those authorities and experts as something that is critical for the city, nobody on this Zoom should make any mistake that this is anything but a heavy lift. This has been a subject that's been bandied about and discussed by several councils since parking meters in our central business district were dismantled and taken down in the 1970s. And the political will or gumption has never really existed to get it past the goal line. So I guess the question is, why is it different now than it has been over these several decades? Number one, the city's fiscal condition. As everybody on this call, or at least on the city side, and our residents should be aware, the city is in $500 million or $500 million of debt and other outstanding obligations. That's a hole that's been dug over a long period of time. And we need to find other ways out of that hole other than just adding more property taxes for our residents. A significant portion of any revenue from installation of parking meters in our central business district would be derived from folks that do not live in the city. And that's where a preponderance or a significant chunk of additional revenue streams that the city comes up with need to come from. Number two, anyone that lives in Long Beach knows that we have a parking issue. It's citywide and it's acute in different areas and plays out differently in different areas. But in the central business district proper, we have a situation where we don't have real turnover in parking curbside or in the center medians. Free parking, quite frankly, is not free. Curbside parking in front of commercial and retail establishments is valued at anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 a year to those storefronts. And if we're not getting meaningful turnover, that is significant and major lost revenue for those store owners in the central business district. So the other element of this is that the revenue that is derived from this could potentially go towards coming up with solutions, or at least studying the problems that exist in other areas, whether it's the West End, whether it's along Broadway, whether it's on Shore Road. The funds that are derived from the installation of parking meters could fund the studies to look at whether residential parking permits are something that we want to explore, or it could even go towards acquiring parking assets that would add to the number of parking resources that we have throughout the city. The one other thing that I failed to mention for the acute problems in the central business district is we have an issue where there's generally 2-hour parking all throughout the district. So all of the shopkeepers and employees of the store owners in the central business districts find themselves, they don't have designated spots, and they find themselves having to go out and move their cars every 2 hours because there's no other alternative. So taking a more comprehensive approach to how we handle our central business district would help alleviate that issue as well. Just by way of background and timeline, the city issued a request for proposal late last year. And we have been in discussions with the sole respondent to that request for proposal since early this year. It's really been over the past 5 weeks or so. I did say sole respondent, the team that is going to speak tonight. We're the lone team that responded to the RFP. If we were not adequately impressed with this team, you will find out before the end of the night. They are the worldwide industry leaders in providing these solutions. If we did not think that they were capable of addressing and implementing a system that would work for the city, we would have reissued an RFP. The RFP we issued was very complex. It dealt with not just installation of meters, but it dealt with the enforcement side of things. And it also, given the city's fiscal condition, it dealt with providing various scenarios for how the installation of the upfront part of it can take place without the city having to go through an undue financial burden upfront. Those are scenarios that we're all still affording. So this was a very intricate, very complex RFP that we put out. We have been in ongoing discussions and negotiations with the respondent. We are generally pleased with the direction that things are going on tonight. And we felt that now was the time to really engage the city council and the public in these discussions. While staff have been working on this for the better part of a year, this is the first time that the council or even the public have heard anything about it outside of the larger conceptual idea of the city is looking at installation of parking meters in the central business district. So tonight is the first opportunity to get into the weeds on some of this stuff. And really the point of it is we're going to have our parking consultant who's been working with us give a little bit of a background, go through the details of the scope of what we're talking about, what the request for proposal was, and then he's going to hand it off to the potential vendor. They're going to talk about their credentials, what they're proposing for the city. Each of those two presentations should take about 15 minutes. And then the opportunity for tonight is to really get council to answer questions that you might have, to get your feedback, and to get direction on where things stand now so that we can continue to move this critically important project forward. So unless there's questions, I will hand it over to the city's parking consultant, Jerry Gioza from Level G Parking Associates.
Thank you, John. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to call up. And I should be able to get through it in about, as John said, in about 15 minutes.
And I would just note before you get into it, Jerry, these should also be up on the city's website too, for anybody that wants to review these slides after tonight's presentations.
Okay. All right. Thank you for having me. My name is Jerry Gioza. I'm a parking consultant. We're based here on Long Island, but I've worked on parking programs all over the country. More locally, I've put together parking programs in the village of Mineola, the village of Patchogue, Great Neck Plaza. I'm working in the town of Southampton and quite a few others, including Bayshore, Islip, town of Babylon, and Huntington, and so forth. I have been working with Dave Frazier and some others in the city of Long Beach over the past decade or so, looking at parking solutions, and it looks like we're closing in on a plan that has been really 10 years in the making. So what are the goals and objectives of this plan? So parking management seeks to promote parking space turnover and other healthy parking patterns in the central business district. By instituting these regulations, it will help to facilitate a cleaner, safer, more customer-friendly parking environment. This in turn encourages economic development and investment in the CBD. We've seen it over and over. Downtown Bayshore is a perfect example. We put meters in downtown Bayshore about about 5 or 6 years ago. Since then, interest and investment in downtown Bayshore has never been higher. In addition, the revenue that's generated from this program will provide a funding source to maintain, improve, beautify, and even expand the parking system. So a little bit of history. Parking meters were installed in downtown Long Beach in the 1950s, removed in the 1970s. Meters were installed at the train station parking garage in 2004. There was a proposal to install parking meters in the West End in 2008. And there was an RFP to furnish and install 35 parking meter kiosks in the CBD in 2011, exactly 10 years ago. And shortly thereafter, the meters at the train station were upgraded in 2012. The current proposal is to institute a parking management plan in the CBD between Lafayette and Monroe. The system would promote the use of parking apps in addition to regular parking meter kiosks. Also, an important part of the program is to provide employee parking zones and discounted parking for city residents. We'll get into that in a little more detail as we move forward. So here's a diagram of the areas that would be impacted. Here we have Lafayette on the west and Monroe on the east, and we're really centered around the train station and City Hall. And again, we're looking this as phase one. Down the road, we could see that this parking management system can be expanded throughout the city. So what are the parking space classifications? We have transient parking. So these are going to be spaces set aside for parking on a first come, first served basis. And folks could use their app or their meter to pay for parking as they go. For regular users of the system, such as downtown employees, they would be able to purchase a parking permit and park in designated areas scattered throughout the central business district. In the case of the employees, we'd be looking for employees to be parking in the center medians and the side streets. This would keep the prime parking spaces along the curbs in front of the stores open for transient parkers, shoppers, visitors. Those are the high turnover spaces. In addition, we'll have some free parking spaces. The handicap stalls we're proposing would be free. And we would also have some 10-minute limit spaces near the post office, City Hall, and the train station for quick in and out trips. Transient parking, our current models indicate that paid parking would be in effect all days between 9 a.m. and 11 p.m. on a first come, first served basis. A number of the spaces would be time limited, for example, 2-hour limit or 4-hour limit, but these time limits would fall off at 5 p.m. So after 5 o'clock, when folks are going to be going to dinner or perhaps to a movie or something like that, there would be no time limit. We're looking at a pay-by-plate operation where the users would be entering their license plate number to begin a parking transaction. So they would either be able to conduct that transaction either through their smartphone on an app or at one of 36 strategically located parking meter kiosks. In addition, because of this unique structure, the pay-by-plate structure, which is becoming more commonplace throughout the country and throughout the region, it will allow us to give city residents a discount if they register their license plate within the system. So of course, when they're asked their license plate number, if they're registered as a city resident in the system, the rate screen that will come up will be that of a resident rather than a visitor, rather than a non-resident. And our current models are proposing that the residents would receive a 50% discount. The transient fees for comparable shore communities, popular resort communities in our area, Point Pleasant, New Jersey, $3.25 per hour. Seaside Heights, Ocean City, and Rehoboth Beach are all at $3 an hour. Permit parking, we're proposing to be in effect all days between 9 a.m. and 11 where permitted, and they also will be digital in nature. No more stickers. The license plate will be the permit, will act as the permit. So these will be digital permits. So your license plate is your parking permit. So when you purchase a permit, you register your plate in the system, whatever that classification may be. The system is smart. It knows where it is. It knows what you've paid for, what areas you are permitted to park, and will download that information to the license plate readers, and everything is interconnected. So how many spaces are we looking at in the central business district? Well, we're looking at the E or employee permits and daily parking spaces to be about 37% of the total, close to 500 spots. 2-hour limit spots close to 400 or about 30%. 4-hour limit spaces, 319, 1-hour limit 80, 30-minute limit 42, and 10-minute limit free spaces right now 15. But this is subject to change. We are still looking at specific areas for these free in and out spaces in particular. But this is the current model that we're working with. It's a workable model, and it's based on studies that we've performed over the past few years. Enforcement, of course, is a critical component of the whole system. The system has to be enforced in order to ensure compliance, that people are parking where they should be, that the turnover is occurring, that they are putting money in the meters as expected, and all of the app transactions, kiosk transactions, and digital permits would be license plate based. And enforcement will be conducted using license plate reader technology. The procurement included 10 vehicle mounted LPR bundles and 40 handheld units. So the LBPB would be outfitted with license plate readers capable of accommodating enforcement throughout not only the central business district where the meters are, but throughout the entire city. In terms of operations and maintenance, the current model, we have that the vendor will operate and maintain the entire system for a period of 5 years. The city will be conducting parking enforcement. And as a result of that new parking enforcement effort in the CBD, enforcing the kiosks, the apps, the permits, and the time limits and so forth, we're assuming that 4 new full-time parking enforcement officer positions would be budgeted in this program. And these would be specials, not these would be specials. So the capital program, I'll go through it. It's quite robust. It's high tech. There are multiple components here. They all need to be integrated, interconnected. And I'm just going to go through them, but this is quite a robust system, as John mentioned earlier. One of the reasons we only had one response was because this was a unique offering, that we wanted this robust system, multifaceted, multi-component, to be fully integrated. And really, there are only so many firms in the United States capable of putting together a system of this complexity. So what do we have? 36 multi-space meter kiosks, 10 vehicle mounted license plate reader bundles, 10 in-vehicle laptops and ticket writers, We need a couple extra vehicles, 2 Ford Interceptor vehicles, brand new, that would be outfitted with the vehicle mounted LPR bundles. 40 handheld ticket writers that would upgrade the entire Long Beach Police Department. The perimeter egress LPR would be completed with an additional 9 lanes. We would require a civil package, including signage and footings, a digital parking permit system, which would allow users to log on to a hosted website and purchase their parking permits, a pay-by-app system, a citation management system, so that whenever a citation is issued, it would be tracked, it would be followed, it would be categorized in the system and monitored. Fine collection services would also be provided by the vendor in cases when tickets are not promptly paid for. Merchant processing, the kiosks and the apps will be accepting credit cards, so merchant processing is included, all vendor provided. In addition, a 24/7 call center that would be provided by the vendor. All the enabling hardware, software, and communications to allow these systems to talk to one another and for all the data to be shared and properly coordinated. A back office function with a dashboard where the operations can be monitored at all times. This is a critical piece of the entire thing. We will always know exactly how much cash, credit card transactions, permit transactions are conducted at all time through this dashboard. It will be an open source for us that could be constantly monitored, so that there could be no it's a high level of internal control in terms of following the cash and the transactions of permits and all other components of the system. And finally, the turnkey delivery of the entire system. The vendor will be delivering the entire system, fully integrated, tested, and operational. No small task, but we believe we have the vendor on board who can do it. The contract structure, the structures currently under review are a lease to buy, a vendor financed structure where the vendor would finance the entire installation and then be paid back through a revenue share. And we are also going to compare that with a city financed structure with new debt. So what will it take to implement this program? We will need to finalize our negotiations and the contract structure with the vendor. We'll require enabling legislation and ordinances. An important component would be a marketing, educational, and public awareness campaign so that all the residents, businesses will know full in advance what to expect, because there are components of the system where businesses can participate in validations programs and so forth. Finally, the system will need to be installed, integrated, and tested. And currently we're working, our models have a go live date of Memorial Day. We have some challenges to meet that target date. It's a little bit of an aggressive schedule, but we think if all things break properly, it's a doable target date. So with that, we are going to turn this over to the vendor to introduce themselves and to give their take on how they would be proceeding.
All right. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Everybody, my name's Sean Wren. I represent Flowbird. We are leading provider of parking solutions around the world, as John had mentioned. I will share a brief PowerPoint for you and introduce our team. Can everybody see this okay? It's all viewable for you all? Okay, perfect. Well, before I start, I did just want to say that we know how important this project is for you all. You know, for all the communities that we work with around the country, you know, we take them all. You know, it's really important for us to get them all right. So we've assembled a strong team here that has delivered paid parking solutions to communities across the country. This project is very visible to the management here at Flowbird, and we're definitely committed to making sure that it gets off on the right foot and that we're visible in the community and we make sure that this project goes well. With me tonight is William Johansson. He's our senior project manager. He's deployed, you know, many projects of this size and larger around the country. I also have James Oliveri with our subcontractor G Techna, and he'll present in a little bit the enforcement solution. We also have with us Jason Casimir, also with G Techna. I can say for sure that I've worked with both of them for the last probably 5 years now, and we work very well together. And I have no concerns that about the system that we'll deploy there in Long Beach. Just going to give you a little bit of background on Flowbird and get into the technology that we're proposing. So our team here, as I mentioned, Flowbird will be the prime contractor. As Jerry had mentioned, we'll take care of the full operations and the maintenance of the system locally in Long Beach. We're also a manufacturer, so we manufacture the pay stations that we're proposing. We also provide a mobile application and a permit system, so we manage that ourselves. We've got 50 years experience in the parking industry, and you can find our systems in 5,000 cities around the world. We'll go into that a little bit in a second. Again, we have G Techna, who is our citation management partner. And also they provide a really sophisticated license plate recognition solution. They've been in business since 1993. They have over 150 clients in the US and Canada. And we also, one of our partners here is going to be RTR Financial Services. They'll be kind of on the very like back end of things when it comes to past due collections. So as you follow kind of the life cycle of a parking ticket, you know, they'll come at the end. You know, if we have trouble collecting a parking ticket, they'll come at the end there. They're based in Staten Island, and they've been in business since 1998. Just some of the numbers for Flowbird. Like I said, we have over 5,000 customers around the world. In the US, we have about 900 clients. We are, as John said, we are the largest provider of on-street parking solutions on the planet and in the US. So, you know, we are confident in saying that you will not find anybody with more experience than Flowbird when it comes to this type of solution. We are financially stable. So, you know, when we're looking at this as a long-term project, as you are, so we consistently generate over $300 million of revenue every year, and our revenues continue to grow as we expand our solutions around the world. We have over 1,300 employees, and we have a market share for on-street parking of over 60%. Our systems are used on a weekly basis by over 100 million users. One thing that's really important for us is the investment in research and development. So we invest over $25 million a year into research and development. A lot of that is now going to digital solutions, like our e-permit solution, like our app solution, and also back office reporting. So clients like yourselves can understand the occupancy levels on the street and really get the most out of the data. When it comes to the hardware, there's nobody that does it better or has more deployments. We have over 320,000 pay stations deployed worldwide. And we've also deployed over 900 mobile apps around the world. Just a snapshot of some of the locations you can find Flowbird in. So if you're lucky enough to go overseas, and if you're in Paris or if you're in London, Moscow, you'll bump into a Flowbird pay station somewhere along your way for sure. I'm sure that we've all been in New York City. So New York City is our oldest client. We started parking pilots with New York City in 1988, and they're also our largest client. So they have over 14,000 pay stations today in New York City. And they're also about to launch our mobile application. We won the RFP for the Park NYC app a few months ago. So we're on track to deploy that in the next few months. On the right-hand side, you can see some of our other US deployments, Chicago being our second largest. They have close to 5,000 of our pay stations. City of Austin, very dynamic parking system they have there. Locally here in the Philadelphia area, we just finished the deployment of over 1,800 pay stations in Philadelphia. And then just another highlight is Detroit, where we have close to 800 pay stations, as well as the Park Detroit app as well. We're very proud of our success on Long Island. If you go to many of the communities nearby Long Beach, you will see either Flowbird Pay Station or the Flowbird app. In those communities, we're proud to say that the City of Long Beach is a Flowbird client. The pay stations that are in the garage are our pay stations. And we've been working with Dave for many years there to support those pay stations. Other highlights, Jerry had mentioned Islip. Brookhaven is a project that went from like an unpaid parking solution to paid parking solution last year. And Rockville Center is another close by community that has about 40 or 50 of our pay stations, some of them on street, some of them in the parking lots, as well as the Flowbird app. So you can really see that we have a lot of experience on the island, and we're really excited to expand what we have already in Long Beach. I'm going to hand it over just for a few minutes to James so he can give you an overview of the GTECHNA company.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate it. James Olivieri. I'm the Senior Solutions Advisor for GTECHNA. Want to give everybody an overview of, I guess, who we are. We report to Harris Computers, who's owned by Constellation Software. Again, you're dealing with a company that's financially sound. We fall under the business unit within Harris, within the public safety sector. We've been providing for the last 20 plus years now integrated e-citation. A lot of these other vendors that you see listed here underneath Harris, of course, these are all public safety CAD and RMS vendors. We've cross-pollinate our application and give them additional tools and functions to be able to help create that more robust offering. Overall, we have over 150 customers now worldwide. Profitable company, of course. We're reached now, that's old numbers there. It's $3.5 billion that the company's offered, and of course, over 150 other countries. Our employee base is around 15,000 and 140,000 customers. You'll note that we report directly to Buffalo, New York, which is within our area that we're proposing this solution to. So we're pretty proud of this structure that we're bringing forward. You can go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this slide, and I don't know if some of you have already been to either downtown DC or Pittsburgh or Minneapolis. Yeah, if you ever get a parking ticket, well, that's our application that's running there. We're pretty proud. What we're putting together is a very strong, robust, and proven solution, similar to the city of Pittsburgh that have Flowbird. Both Flowbird and GTechna have been supporting Pittsburgh for over 20 plus years in parking enforcement processing, improving their parking program, applying compliancy, and improving enforcement overall. Pittsburgh has integrated vehicle LPR. The city is fully pay-by-plate. As an example, pay-by-plate meters, permits, everything's tied to the license plate. It's easy for residents, non-residents to come in, pay for their parking. The system's fully integrated. Everything speaks to the GTechna enforcement application. The goal that we're bringing forward here is anybody transitioning to this, we understood, already cut our teeth 15 years ago in implementing pay-by-plate. All the nuances behind that, we've addressed it so that the goal here is not to issue tickets in error for whether it be latency issues or miscommunication. We have software intelligence to help address that. Our experience, of course, digs deep into the e-citation. We help a lot of cities, address other departments, whether it be code or bylaw or property enforcement, whether it be fair ticket issuance. Cities like Massachusetts, within a transportation industry, you have MBTA. They do fair ticket issuance and parking. So we understand that really well, and looking forward to bringing that program to the next level. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, go ahead, Sean. I think that's yours, and then we'll catch back up.
Yeah, so real quick, Jerry touched on the products and solutions that we're going to deliver. Just wanted to highlight some of those for you this evening. As Jerry mentioned, the benefits of bringing an integrated parking system to Long Beach, would be, a decrease in the traffic congestion there. There's many studies out there that talk about people circling blocks for parking. The goal is to try to open up some spaces in front of the shops there, so people can easily find parking, and also drive more traffic to the merchants. The goal is to get people into those shops and restaurants as quickly as possible. Driving around looking for a parking spot is not what we all want to be doing with our time. Obviously, revenues generated from a parking system can be used to improve the city. We've had, clients like Cooperstown, New York, implement paid parking, and they use the revenues for various things, but street lights, sidewalks, those sort of things. So parking revenues can really benefit the city long term. And with the Flowbird team and the GTechna team here, you do get a very reliable customer focused vendor solution. We really strive to make sure that our customers are happy and we have a customer focus. As Jerry had mentioned, parking kiosks, the plan would be to implement parking kiosks in certain areas of the city. We provide a solar-powered parking kiosk with a full-color touch display screen. It's really the most advanced parking system on the market, and the most user-friendly. Really acts like a tablet or an iPhone on the street. Our proposal at the moment is based on providing you with as many payment options as you can. So coins, bills, and credit card acceptance. There's also an extend by text option. So if you want, you could pay at the kiosk and then make a text to extend your time if there's still time left on your parking stay. There's also a validation code option, which we can work with the merchants on to have them offer validations to their customers and employees. We also have an integrated mobile application that's on the App Store. Many communities on Long Island have the Flowbird mobile app already, such as Mineola, Rockville Center, Brookhaven, East Rockaway. So the Flowbird app's already ingrained in the Long Island community. It allows people to skip the kiosk altogether. If they don't want to pay at the kiosk, they can just pay by their phone. You do get nice reminders to let you know that time's about to expire, and you can extend that payment right from your phone up to the maximum time limit. There's also a Find My Car feature in case you're, you kind of forget where you parked. The phone will help you out with that. Jerry had also mentioned the e-permits, which is really becoming more popular as cities try to move away from stickers and hang tags. The goal is to make everything digital and based on the license plate. One nice thing about the permit system is once somebody purchases a permit, it's activated right away. There's no delay in waiting for a permit to be mailed to you. You're good to go right away. You can have multiple vehicles on your permit system. And you can make payments online. So no need to go into an office to buy a permit or make a payment. I'll let James talk a little bit about the enforcement solution here.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Sean. So in our proposal to the city, we put together a proven platform of hardware and software. On the left-hand side, the officers, of course, would eliminate the manual tickets, move towards a more electronic-based ticketing system. The application would reside on an Android device shown here. Of course, it's connected Bluetooth to the printer. Of course, also on the right-hand side is integrated vehicle LPR with software. Both systems have been proven. They're very transparent, communicate amongst both. So I'll give you an example. People pay, of course, at the meters or through permits. Vehicle LPR can monitor and track compliancy up and down the main road. Any violators, it would pop up saying unpaid license plate. And at that point, the officers can then populate the basic information, location, violation, vehicle information, and issue the citation to that vehicle. And at that point, all that is in real time. It's stored on the command center where city staff will be able to see that. At the same time, that information is displayed in real time on a web portal where customers can go on and pay for that. So there's a little more description in the next slide. So this is another added functionality as part of the back office is accountability and tracking your assets in real time. It's officer safety, it's awareness. So the back office tracks a lot of data that it's whether it be operational data, whether it be financial data, all that is stored. But not only that, but the heat map and activity function allows system administrators to monitor where their officers are in any given moment, track their assets as they're moving. If you lose a device, for example, you'd be able to locate it through GPS. But it allows a high-level overview of how your operations are working day to day. The GAP report is to be able to see, what your officers are doing. Are they accountable? Have they been idle for X amount of time? The goal here is to be, you've invested quite a bit in this program, and we're giving you and bringing you forward some tools to be able to manage and monitor your operations live. This next slide here is, I know everybody in Long Beach, all the residents pay for their parking. It's the non-residents that don't pay. A lot of challenges came with COVID, right? So not everybody's allowed to go to City Hall. So our self-serve customer portal has improved in the last year. We're adding more information, more relevant data on the ticket portal. To give you an example, when customers want to pay their ticket, they'll go on the city website. It'll direct them to a portal where they are able to enter their license plate number, ticket number, and it'll prompt them directly to this type of page. Within the page, customers will be able to see all the photos that were taken, all the evidence of the citation, a copy of the ticket, a GPS address of where the ticket was issued, as well as the ability to pay one or multiple citations. Once that's done, it closes the loop. Those that don't pay, of course, there's late notices that go out. And when it reaches a delinquent stage, at that point, it's exported to collections. And that's where the collections agency would make proper calls to see and pull in the revenue that's owed to the city. So this allows customers to be able to pay, even go as far as appeal. So no more paper-based appealing, mailing in either tickets or appeal letters. Everything can now be done online more efficiently and customer friendly.
Thanks, James. And to round out the system, as Jerry had mentioned, the data is really important. So what we provide as a team is a web-based hosted system for the city of Long Beach, where your team would have access 24/7 to all reports that are related to the system, transactions, alarms on the pay stations, all the information about the enforcement. That's all there for you. Now, we are going to be operating the system. So this isn't something you're going to have to be doing on a day-to-day basis. But obviously the data will be there if you're interested in it. And just to kind of round out the flow of how everything works, and just to give you some assurances here, everything that happens with the system is in real time. So all the pay stations, all the app transactions, and all the permits are pushed in real time to our servers and then pushed out to the enforcement officers. So the data is flowing real time based on the license plates. And as we mentioned before, this system's already in place in many communities around the country. It is tested and working, so we don't have any concerns about the reliability of the system. I'll touch on operations and maintenance real quick. Flowbird will be responsible for all the maintenance and the operations of the system and the customer support. I'm not going to go into all the bullets here, but we understand that this is a critical program for you all, and the most important thing is going to be stakeholder engagement, talking to the merchants, talking to the community, getting their feedback on a regular basis, and reviewing the program on a monthly basis. We'll have dedicated technician support in Long Beach, so that we can make sure that the equipment is always operational. And we have our 24/7 call center, which will take end user support calls for pay station operations, as well as the mobile app and permit questions. And then lastly, just wanted to touch on public awareness. I mentioned, talking to key stakeholders, but we do have a plan, a larger plan for public awareness that includes, kind of creating a campaign, press releases, make sure that the media is aware of the program well before we start, and obviously a signage package so that everybody's aware of how to pay and where to pay. On-site ambassadors is important for us. So we'll have an on-site ambassador team during the launch, talking to merchants, talking to parkers, making sure they're comfortable with the program. We typically encourage what we call a soft enforcement at the beginning. And that way people get used to paying without fearing the parking tickets. Social media is very important. Monitoring social media is very important. We want to get the feedback from the community and make adjustments where we need to. And then after the launch, obviously we'll still be there operating the system, still continuously monitoring social media and news, getting to a normal enforcement situation, and continuing to survey the local merchants. So with that, I'm going to hand back to John, and we're free to answer any of your questions as well.
So there's your high level overview. I know that was actually quite a bit to digest. But at this stage of the game, we would open the floor to the council to ask any questions that they might have of anybody that's presented tonight. We also have the full bevy of city employees here to answer any questions from our side of things. But this is the opportunity to start to ask questions and start to give us direction on where we want to go with this.
Great. Thank you, John, for that. And thank you, everyone, for your presentations. We really appreciate your time and already your dedication to Long Beach. Obviously, there's a lot to discuss and a lot to digest. I mean, I remember hearing about level 3, I think level G 10 years ago. So this is something that's been in the works for a long time. And I'm not surprised that, it's this council in the past that these administrations that have really got to the heart of the issue. So with that, I'd like to sort of structure the next part of the discussion, because again, there's so many questions and so much information to digest. So first, I'd like to start with the key stakeholders from the city management to provide their insights, because I think they are going to have a lot of answers to the questions that the council will have. After that, I'd like to hear, from the council, ask their questions and focus on the operational issues of the systems that are involved. And finally, I'd like to save the best for last, and that's the costs and the financing. Okay, so with that, I'd like to hand it over to our key stakeholders and city leadership. Ron, you want to take us, or Donna, do you want to take a stab first and then pass it on?
What I wanted to say is I want both Ron and John and Dave Frazier to talk, because they have been with the project and they bring me in when necessary, and we talk timelines, and I ask questions and then they go back. So Ron, John, Dave, you can start off.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually ask Commissioner Walsh to back clean up on this, because I think he's got the most recent sort of substance. I mean, I said my piece, I think early on in queuing this up. This has been a long time coming. The city is in a position where, this is a unique revenue stream that is not just a tax on residents. This is a user fee. This will benefit, and it may be counterintuitive for some, but this is something that actually benefits when done well. And we believe we have the team in place to do it well. This benefits the businesses in our central business district and actually attracts economic development, and attracts new businesses and brings people into our community. So, I mean, you heard most of my perspective on the rationale, why this is for. This is recommended from kind of the highest authorities at the state, our own financial consultants. The state backed it up with the help of Senator Kaminsky and others with, a $500,000 grant to help pay for the upfront cost of this. So while we're understanding that this is a dramatic change for our residents and how the city has functioned, this becomes an imperative, I think, to continue to grow the city's finances in ways that are not just an additional tax increase on our residents. And I think the funding streams that it creates allow us to explore other ways of whether it's, creating increased mass transit options, biking options and bike lanes and dedicated facilities for that, acquiring assets for other fixed parking structures or construction of structured parking, multi-tiered construction. A revenue stream like this doesn't just address what's happening there, but allows us to explore and address some of the other challenges happening throughout the city. So my preamble to this whole meeting was basically my take on it. If Mr. Frazier has anything else he would like to add, because his engagement with this dates back over a decade. But then obviously Commissioner Walsh has a whole lot to say, and I think a very informed and unique perspective on this, and he's been very ingrained in this process to date. So I have no doubt his comments would be enlightening as well.
Okay. Dave, do you have anything to add?
I'm just glad to see this come back around and see that we're moving forward with this. It's been, this is probably our third or fourth go around on the central business district trying to get meters put in. This is something we've seen, most of the other communities on Long Island and, and around the country, they have this type of, these type of meters in place in their downtowns. And they've been, good for those locales. I'm just very happy to see that we're moving forward and that we'll finally be able to get this, hopefully get this going.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate all your work on this over the years. Commissioner Walsh, I know you could speak for about 2 or 3 hours on this, but let's try to keep it. Let's go for 10 or 15 minutes, okay?
What, Donna tell you to say that?
No.
Actually, I'll try.
No, I would have sent you a text.
I could talk for a while on it, but really what I want to focus in on is the advancement to the city in general that this is going to bring. Technologically, right now, what this is going to do for the city with regard to the police department and our enforcement efforts is it brings everything all together. Right now, we have a very disjointed parking management and summons system. The actual vendor that we use right now, their information is dated. It's very difficult to get a good scofflaw information. It's very difficult to get the amount of collections that we actually have in the city. All that has been really beautifully demonstrated by Flowbird and G-Techna specifically on how they're actually going to be able to take our information and data and bring it to such a way that it's usable to us, so that we're not everybody notices the boots around town, right? So pragmatically, we don't want to boot a car that doesn't deserve to be booted. So this brings us to a level where the error margin gets dramatically reduced. They talk about LPRs. For those who don't understand what an LPR is, that's a license plate reader. This system is based on our police officers, our specials driving through the lots and reading license plates. And when you go into the lot and you put your license plate in, when your plate expires, meaning when your time expires, a notification is automatically generated that people have been overtime parking. So we'll be able to target our enforcement efforts. But beyond all that, the technological advancement prepares us for the next iterations for the city for the parking management plan. It's scalable, it's adjustable. This particular plan, the license plate readers on our cars is going to enhance, in general, our crime fighting ability in the city. Things that people don't think about. The license plate readers, when they capture the license plates, if somebody commits a crime throughout the city, we'll now be able to see where they've been. If any of our cars are close by a car that's been in the area, the data that we get is going to be able to give us the ability to fight crime on a whole new level. Not something that you usually focus on with a parking program, but when I started to raise these questions and I brought them up to James Oliveri from G-Techna and started to talk about the ways we could use the things to protect the citizens of the city from crime was dramatic. I think I even brought some things to Jim's attention that he didn't expect to be able to hear the way we could use this. But beyond all that, we were really very careful when we discussed the program as a group with Flowbird, with G-Techna, with John and the team, to try and think of everything that needed to be considered for the city. So how do we let the people in town feel as if they're not being abused by the fees, right? And it's responsible. How do we get the turnover in the middle of the city to drive economic development? A lot of our store owners don't even recognize this, that the parking spots in front of their stores are generally worth about $350,000 in revenue every single year to their stores, and they park in them. So when you start to change the behavior of people, giving them spots to park in, but leaving those spots in front of the stores to be subject to the turnover that the city would like to see to start to revenue generate, these are the types of things that really start to change the culture and will help revitalize Long Beach even that much further. There's even to the point where Jerry, our consultant, said, giving people the first 10 minutes free. You still got to go over to the meter. You still got to put your license plate in. But if you know you're running in and running out, you're registered, you get your first 10 minutes free, you get in your car and you leave. That's what we really want to focus on. The turnover of the spots, getting people to change the way they treat their parking and the parking situation and the center of town and eventually the whole city. So, I mean, if there's specific questions that you have as a council, I'll be more than happy to address the considerations that I brought to bear on it and that we discussed. I have to say that my confidence in Flowbird and G-Techna as their partner was magnified after our discussions. The scalability of the system is something that, we're starting out with 36, I believe, of these parking meters. As we talked about it, if the meters aren't being used, we can scale down the number of meters we use, and we can utilize them in the next phase of our parking management program for the city. If we choose never to go any further, we can sell that equipment because the equipment doesn't change that much. It's software based. The hardware doesn't change so much. The software. We talked about making sure that all of the software is always the most current. You don't have to go to the kiosk to upgrade your system. It's all done electronically. If we're seeing things from our side where we're having problems with meetings, everything is managed by the company. So the one thing I do want to say is the city doesn't have to become the expert in managing the equipment and the software. The city logistically handles the enforcement, the fines, and the management of what the spaces are, how long we want people to park in spaces. Other than that, everything's over to the company, and we have experts able to deal with that. If we choose to change that after the 5-year term, we can hire experts to do it or another company. But I mean, generally speaking, when you have something that works and it's not broken, don't try and fix it. So I was very impressed with their competency in the space. I was impressed with their ability to address all of the technological concerns that I had, making sure that we were able to integrate all of our systems. Very importantly, so someone might say, why do we need 40 of these handheld units? Well, guess what? All of our specials on our boardwalk now can have one of these units, and they can do city codes in there, and they can do parking violations. No more walking around with a pad. And you give one to every two, they walk around, they can do that anywhere in the city to do these things. It doesn't have to be a parking meter to utilize the summons ability for these handhelds. And that's gonna reduce costs in a lot of different areas, not only in just the printing of our summonses, but the ability to deal with a summons automatically. Right now, before we get rid of our current vendor, we're going to probably look for an amnesty program. If you have outstanding summonses, mail in your fines and you'll be forgiven, so that we clean up as much as we can before we switch over. With this system, it's automatic. After 30 days, they tell you, you're fine, you didn't come to court, they'll send out a mailer. If that doesn't work, another 30 days, your fine is now going to be this, and they'll put you in collections automatically. Instead of us having to trigger an automatic collections thing, now you go into collections, and then there's, it's a fee-based structure that, they get their amount that they charge as a service fee, and the city gets a much higher revenue generations from the summonses that we've been issuing. So that is a quick overview from my perspective and the way I looked at it. It's all up here, so anything you want to ask me, I'll be more than happy to address your questions. How'd I do, Donna?
Great. But before I hand it over to the council, can you just speak about what the staff, can you speak about why you chose the Cadillac version of systems in the RFP? And then what municipalities on Long Island did you talk to in doing your analysis?
You're talking to me specifically, you want to talk to Jerry about that?
Or the, I'd like to hear from the staff, because they really, you guys did the RFP.
Yeah, I don't know that we chose the Cadillac version per
Mhm.
se. We in our ongoing discussions on a staff level are trying to look at what position is the city in and what would work for the city. So we recognized up front, a major capital investment in order to get longer term gains might not be the right fit for us. But we also know that, if you're just installing these kiosks through town and you're not looking forward to the future of should this be app based? I mean, and really, quite frankly, part of our discussions were should this be only app based?
Right.
But we dialed that back to include at this stage of the game more kiosks than we had originally proposed, because we feel that that's the more equitable way to go about it and it's the more pragmatic way to go about it, because we can't expect everybody to have a smartphone at this day and age. There's higher saturation of that, but where we really ended up is what we felt would work for our residents. We did not want to be punitive towards our residents. We did not want to adversely impact the flow of business in our central business district. We didn't want to slow down economic development, and we put it was up on the website and we can provide it to any of the council. We put forward a very detailed, very intricate, very complex request for proposal that we thought would work for our city.
John, let me say one quick thing there.
Sure.
When you say like the Cadillac of things, this system, there are ways to greatly enhance this from where we are even.
Mhm.
Like there are ways where your license plate gets read every time you pull into a lot, and it tells you right away if that car doesn't leave the lot within 10 minutes, an alert goes, you got a car in this lot that never left because the plate wasn't read on the way out. We chose not to go that far with it. I mean, each one of those license plates reader can be very expensive. We can always do that later. What we did choose for this is to have people, because the people aren't just going to be doing the center part of town. And we expanded the hours, right? We went from 9 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. That generates revenue, but now we have to have people to enforce it until 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
So it kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, the Cadillac system, if you want to talk about, we could dramatically enhance this to triple the price if you wanted to, but it was really considered what is the best fit for the culture we're trying to create as we understand it in Long Beach, to create the responsibility and the responsible use of the spots, to drive revenue generation into our stores, to create the turnover. Because you can sit in Geno's for 4 hours and you're still only going to eat one meal, or you can sit in Geno's for 45 minutes, get out and somebody else comes in, just using that as an example. So I think that we came up with a good balance, but of course the council will have its own opinion as to what direction the council feels the city should go in.
We
And
also
even-
looked at technology and that the technology can be used in the future. We didn't want to get into the part where we're looking at technology, what is good for today, because we know technology changes rapidly. And so one of the ways, and what I will say is that this conversation that we've been having about this with the staff and the vendor and with Jerry has been going on for months, because we have said, well, what about this? Let's take consideration of this. So this, by far, this is not the Cadillac version,
Okay.
but we came up with the best version we thought that would work for the city.
Okay. Well, since we've been at this an hour and 15 minutes, I'd like my colleagues to start asking their questions. If someone could, on the council, could start with their series of questions, please. Anybody?
Karen, did you say, I'm happy to, but I thought I heard you say in the beginning that we're doing the financial pieces at the end. Is that the case, or if you
I
have
think to structure the conversation to,
Okay.
so,
minor
so-
financial, so
Okay.
I'll,
oh, wait. Any, Liz, John, Roy?
Mine are financial too. I think the financial is the big aspect here. I
Okay.
don't, I'll wait till after the financial part.
Operational part. John, do you have any operational questions?
I do.
Thank you, John.
You would have been surprised if I didn't.
Exactly.
I was wondering, I guess, Jerry, this might be for you. Could you just discuss a little bit that inaugural pay zone inventory that you showed us? Can you just talk a little bit about what that's based on, how you came up with that division of spaces?
Sure. Over the past, excuse me, over the past few years, we've been conducting occupancy counts in these 1,350 spaces to see what the parking patterns were. So as a result of those observations, we were able to get estimates of how many of those cars were employees, how many were visitors, how many were commuters, and so forth. And we were able to categorize, based on those observations, and the inaugural time limits that we established were as a result of those observations. Now, I will say that I've been involved with parking systems all over the country. The best ones are always tinkering with that. You might add a few 2-hour spaces if you don't have enough. You might, I will tell you that we are not going to get it perfect on the first rollout, but with this system that we have, we can monitor all the functions and we can make adjustments along the way and tweak it until we get it just right.
Okay, thanks. So obviously anybody that lives in Long Beach knows we have a fair number of businesses where people kind of run in and out. So the hallmark of driving down Park Avenue is having to go around all the double parked cars in the central business district. Nice to hear that this first free 10 minutes may alleviate some of that, because people then could actually park, get 10 minutes, run in, pick up their pizza or their dry cleaning, and run out. But let's say Ron brought up a point, somebody runs into a store for 45 minutes, you run into CVS for 30 minutes. Does the system allow to purchase in partial hour increments or less than hour increments, or do you have to purchase in hour increments?
My recommendation was that if for example, it's $2 an hour, that you can get 15 minutes for 50 cents, or 7.5 minutes for a quarter.
Okay, so they do have there will be the ability, if they think they're going to be in a store for 30 minutes, to get 30 minutes.
That's correct.
Okay,
Or at least the system has capacity for that, Mr. Bendo.
okay. Mr. Bendo, oh, we're getting formal.
Councilman Bendo, John, however you like it.
The other thing too, I guess I didn't hear addressed, it's not necessarily a part of a pay system, but it is part of a parking management system, is deliveries. We get a lot of stores along there, they get deliveries. We don't have dedicated delivery zones, loading, unloading zones in the central business district. So again, we have lots of delivery trucks, double parking. Was there any thought given to allocating space for delivery vehicles? So again, they're not blocking parking spots when they're double parked. And then also, impacting the flow of traffic.
Delivery, I think, is something that we still need to work on. The initial focus of this is, you want to go get a slice of pizza at Gino's? It's 23-year resident of the city. I don't know how many times I've passed on a slice at Gino's because it's impossible to get a parking spot there, and traveled around. So I think on this initial pass, what we're looking to do is try and get that turnover. I think it's going to take a little bit more of an extensive study to figure out how we, so the quicker turnover of the curbside parking should help alleviate a very large chunk of the double parking that takes place. The delivery component, Commissioner Walsh appears to have some thoughts on it, but
Yeah,
that's
so-
going to take a
so-
little bit more.
Generalize the behavior of people with the double parking of trucks. When you don't have spots for people to pull in, right, with these trucks and stuff like that, they'll double park. Now, double parking in a 3-lane area is actually permissible for commercial vehicles that are actively loading and unloading in commercial zones, unless it's strictly prohibited by an ordinance or a law, right? In the case that's happening in front of all these stores right now, Councilman Bendo, is that there's no turnover of those spaces. At least a lot of them stay parked for longer periods of time. So as you start to drive people to pull in and out of those spaces, there'll be more opportunity, one, for the trucks or the delivery vehicles to pull in. But secondly, this is going to be enforcement intensive. The success of this program and the success of how this is going to work is almost wholly dependent upon the police department ensuring that people are paying the meters. And that includes the entire central business district area. So those cars that we're buying and those specials that we're hiring, that's going to be their post, is to be driving up and down this area. They'll be moving double park cars along, or they'll get a ticket. If there's a spot just up the block for a truck to be parked in, and he just didn't want to walk 3 stores away, he'll be told park in the spot, or you'll get a ticket. So it changes the behavior and the manner in which people are used to double and sometimes triple parking in front of that area, which we've all seen. Right now, we focus in on it, but the double parking takes place, as we know, in the summertime way too often. But the focus of the special enforcement officers that are going to be in this area will be in the central business district to ensure that people are using the spots and ensure that there's no double parking. That's going to be part of this whole enforcement effort, changing the way people behave in that area.
Okay, I guess I would just suggest thinking about the delivery component of it, because if these trucks are, if the goal is to turn over spots, if these trucks are blocking 4 spots for 30 minutes while they're unloading or loading, you just took revenue, out of the system. So I think we need to think about that, because
Yeah, absolutely.
look,
I agree.
there's a lot of deliveries that happen on Park Avenue. We see it every day.
So I know that part of the consideration that Jerry had when he was doing the analysis of the spots is he went with what was existing zones already. There are some loading zones and unloading zones, and then there's certain restrictions. The consideration is that the council would like to see areas of loading zones to be considered. I'm sure Jerry can come up with some suggested areas based upon the actual traffic patterns that take place to suggest use that. But remember, when you make it a loading zone, you take it away from the inventory for people to park in. So it's a give and take.
Yeah,
But what
just
do you guys
something to
want to do?
consider.
Absolutely, it can be done.
And then I guess the last thing, non-financial, the permits for the train station, could those be also put in through this system, purchased through this system?
They actually are going to be. Everything is going to be going to plate-based systems. So your plate will be registered as someone who uses that, and that's going to be something that we'll be working with Dave Frazier. So there'll be no more of the physical permit anymore. You'll go in, you'll get your permit, you'll get the ability to do it, and it gets entered into the system, your plate's in, and then you just put your plate in, and you're automatically allowed when you're in that yard, that yard, that parking structure, it'll work that way so that it automatically gets billed as being in the parking garage.
All right, and sorry, I did have one more. So I have the Flowbird application on my phone. Now I know sometimes when you've used it, you have to put in a space number, where you park. So does that now mean we're going to have to create numbered parking spots?
No.
Or
The way it actually works here, and I'm probably biting off a little bit of your thunder here, Jerry, but they're mobile zones. you look at the sign of where you're parking, you just put in the zone that you're in, that automatically ties to the spaces that are allocated to that zone and the amount of time that you're allowed to park there. And when you put that into the app, it'll pop up with the maximum amount of time that you're allowed to purchase based upon the zone that you're in.
Okay.
Okay. Liz, do you have any operational questions?
No, my concern, of course, is a public outreach,
Well,
which has been addressed. So I'm.
Liz, it's funny that you said that. We actually, I asked them about that, about the communications component, and they, Flowbird actually has, when he was talking about those ambassadors, he mentioned part of the ambassadors, they actually have a team of people that come into the town with communications pamphleting, and they go into every single store and they tell every single store owner what the program is, how it's going to work, explaining it to them, and even work with the public as they're out there to create that understanding before it gets implemented. And like he said, you always start out with something soft. You don't start out on day one hammering people with tickets. You start on educating the public over time so that after a month or so of them starting to understand that, hey, you're gonna have to pay for parking now, and then you start easing your way into enforcement over a period of time, so that I'm not sure what their normal phase-in is, but I'm sure it's between 1 and 3 months, that they, by the time the end of the period, it's more strict enforcement of not paying your summonses. I'm not sure exactly, though. I'd have to ask Flowbird for their recommendations and for what they actually see in cities of similar size and demographics as to what we're dealing with.
Great.
I have a couple of operational questions that came up just now.
Okay, Roy.
Ron, you said that it's all plate based. If you, let's say your car's being repaired at the dealer and you get a loaner car, is there a way to switch your plate for the time being?
I'm not sure the answer to that. I'm sure it could be built into the system if we wanted to, because it's like I said, it's a software program. So if it was a temporary plate for your particular car, so when you say plate based, if you're an in-town resident and your car is needing to fix, I'm sure there's a way that we could, if you went upstairs to the clerk's office and you said, look, my permit is normally this is where I live, I have a rented car, I'm gonna have it for 3 weeks. I'm sure there's a way we can temporarily give a permit for a shorter period of time for that. It wouldn't matter if you don't live in town, because as long as the car has a plate.
Yeah, no, if it's something that can be done.
That's a great consideration, though. It's not something that came up in discussion, but I'm positive, because it's software based, that we'd be able to do that.
And Ron, this is Jason from GTechno. What I'd like to say here is you could actually have a configuration potentially where you could associate multiple plates to a permit, and only one could park in a zone at any given time, or it would generate a shared permit violation. So that could be one way to do it.
Solution, Roy. There it is. That's
Well,
right.
you never know. If you're lucky enough to get a loaner car, you don't know what it is. You know, I've yet to get one, but the other question is, you had said that double parking is permitted when you're unloading in a 3-lane street. And then you said that, however, if you saw a place down the road that the truck could go into, you would tell the truck to move, or you would give them a ticket. What would be the basis for the ticket if it's permitted?
So everything's written in the VTL. I don't have that particular section memorized, but after studying for so many tests over my whole life, there is a certain number of feet that if there's an open parking space within a certain number of feet of where you are double parked and you're doing an active delivery, you must pull into that space or you get a ticket.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do
I just
have
don't
them.
remember. Yeah.
All right.
I used to have it memorized, not anymore. So
Okay.
I still have a bunch of it up there.
All right.
Anything else, Roy?
Nope.
Okay, I just have a few quick questions. I would just like to make sure or state now that, I do have some concern about the public employee parking and the formation of an illicit market for those spots. So I think enforcement is going to be key, and that is equitable, that, how, and that the policy for employee parking be actually published on the website, and that ought to be communicated to all businesses in maybe multiple formats.
It actually goes even deeper than that. Each particular business will get a visit from the vendor. They'll explain the rules to them, that we've set up, and the number of employees. Now, an employee could get a employee parking, but when it's going to be up to there's only going to be a certain number of permits that each particular business is going to allow to have, to encourage them that, hey, look, if an employee leaves, you got to let us know, because somebody else's plate is going to be able to use the employee parking. You see,
Right,
you see what I'm saying? So their plate gets registered. So if I work now at Starbucks and Starbucks wants to park here, then my plate gets registered to Starbucks as an employee for as long as I work there. When I no longer work there, it behooves Starbucks to get my plate off and the new employee's plate on, so that they can also get the benefit of the reduced parking and a closer spot.
It's tough when you're managing staff with different dedication levels of employment, so it's something to keep an eye on.
Yep.
So this is I think a twofold question. You touched upon it earlier, Ron, where it seems that the plate information is integrated into other systems within the city. So my first question is there a privacy issue that someone can talk about?
No, there's no, you have no right to privacy of your license plate information or data. When you register your car is, it's open in public place. So, I couldn't, to the point where even if I was flying an airplane and had an LPR and it was on your private property, I'd still be able to take your plate information. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That being said, any place you go in public where your plate is red, it's considered public information.
Okay, so if you take that a step further, can you use that information to determine whether or not a person with a Long Beach, a license plate registered in Long Beach is renting an illegal apartment?
So it's very interesting that you say that. With the LPR data and your creativity in your mind is the limits of the program. So long as you have the people to cull through the data and understand it. So as the Long Beach police officers are driving around with their cars with the LPRs on them, reading plates, you can get plate data. And if you notice that a particular plate is always on a particular block, but it's not registered to anybody on that block, the building department might want to use that data to say, well, let's try and figure out why this particular car is parked on a particular block every single night between 11 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning. That could be done, and it's legal.
Okay, so right now it's kind of a disparate system, but it depends on the collaboration and the communication between the departments to get to that level.
So you'd be talking at that particular point in time that somebody would actually be complaining that there's a illegal apartment someplace, and then the investigation with the building department would be enhanced by the data that you have in the LPR.
Okay, my final question is, Ron, would you need additional servers in order to make this work?
No, everything is cloud-based here.
Okay,
It's all up
perfect.
in the cloud, and it's all managed by GTechna at this point, and we have access on the back end to a dashboard to be able to manage some things. And as you need more data, we can always purchase more data. And I'm watching GTechna shake his head like, oh, he was paying attention.
Okay, so with that, I think we'll move to the big part. The highlight is finances. We'll start with Tina. Go to
Before you
Roy.
jump to that, I just want to say one other thing about LPRs. What you don't know right now is that almost every tow company in Nassau and New York City and Long Island has LPR readers on their car and on their trucks. And as they're driving down the streets, they're collecting all this data already. So your license plate and where you've been is read continuously all day long, and a pattern, like if you go missing, that's how we find missing people now. We just track their plates, or we track their phones, or we track their usage of their information. So the world is actually becoming, what was it, 1984 in 2022. So
I don't want to think about that right now. It's too.
Also, Ron, we don't necessarily have to keep the data indefinitely. We have purge tasks that can be configured based on how long the city wants to keep some of this stuff. So keep in mind, Karen, we're not just necessarily going to keep it indefinitely unless Ron wants to, and he has every right to if he wants to. But we can purge that at a monthly basis, bi-weekly basis, whatever it may be.
yeah, it's all archive data that gets put away in case this. But you would want to know that if we found out that there was a murder that took place in an apartment and nobody found out for 6 months, well, the first place we're going is to the LPR data to start to investigate who was in the area at the time that took place. It would have been very useful over the summer for the sunset parties. Extremely useful having all this data, because we've been able to narrow down very quickly who did that shots fired, for instance. So,
Okay, we're at an hour and a half right now, so we'll close it with the finances. So Tina, you want to take over?
Sure. Yes, I want to echo what folks have said, Karen and others, to thank you all for a very thorough presentation of this very important project to our city. So thank you for that this evening. Mainly, I don't know who is the best to answer this, if it's Gerard or James, I don't know, or perhaps, others. Is there a revenue projection based on some of the other comparable cities that you have a calculation for that we might be able to expect?
I would actually pitch this one to Ina, I think, for the
Okay.
moment, because she's been dealing with a lot of those models.
Hi, good evening. Hi. So I have to say though, I hate to disappoint you all, but finances are actually not going to be included in this presentation because for actually two reasons. One, it's rather complicated, involved, and it needs its own meeting, right? And two, I'm still having some of my questions unanswered. So I wouldn't want to share with you something that's not fully vetted by me. Still doing my due diligence. I can talk a little bit conceptually about the revenues and expenses of the program and point where my questions are, if that's what everybody wants to hear, but basically we're going to be presenting finances of the project in a separate meeting.
Okay, I think it would be helpful if you had the conceptual, at least for right,
Sure.
in the moment, and then we could get a more thorough.
So before you
Sure.
start, one of the things we want everyone to know is that the finances were set up one way when we originally did the RFP. And then later FRB came back and said, we're going to give you money. And under the money was this project. And so we've gone back and asked for different models. So she can give you her conceptual, but we're still working through that because we know now we have money coming from elsewhere that can help us offset some of the costs. So go ahead, Ina.
Sure. So on the revenue side, basically it's a pretty, I know that a table, and once we're doing a financial presentation, it's obviously going to be accompanied by slides. But on the revenue side, if you guys can imagine, the formula for the revenue is pretty straightforward. It's the number of spaces that we have available for the program times the number of hours that each one of the spaces that we will charge for each one of the spaces, like from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, times the assumption of the percentage of usage, right? So will there be 100% demand or will there be an 80% demand? And that's something that I personally am still reviewing. That's something that I'm working with Jerry on. These are the models that he prepared based on his extensive experience in the industry. And then that once you get a product of those three things, you multiply it by what we'll decide to charge it per hour, right? So that's how you arrive at the total revenue from the parking. Another component of the revenue is enforcement. How much we think people not gonna pay parking and how much we'll be able to collect through the enforcement. So that would be a gross revenue on a very simple, basic level. In terms of the cost, there are several components of the cost. And like Donna said, when we were doing an RFP, we were asking for one approach, And then between the time that we issued an RFP and got a proposal, we got a grant from FRB in November, and we are exploring, and we asked Jerry to relate it to the vendor, that we actually want to know what it would cost if we were to go ahead with our own financing. So on the cost side, it's if we were to use the current proposal, the city only has an expense of hiring 4 specials alongside with their fringe benefits. And basically, for the most part, that's it. However, obviously, there are other components of this if we are to untangle the way that it's proposed right now. There is a software cost, a hardware cost, there is a maintenance cost. That's something that we're still looking for, to review those components so we can make an educated and best decision for the city once we have that information. I don't have this information at this point, so hopefully we'll get it soon. And once that's done, we'll have another meeting with you where we'll be presenting that in a very, very great detail, because that's very obviously very important project that's not only going to improve on a quality of life for the city of Long Beach and for the visitors to our central business and to the drivers through the business, through the central business and through the Park Avenue, but will also allow us to recoup millions of dollars that the city spends on the road maintenance that city borrowed and pays in the debt service on the road maintenance, on our operating costs of the street maintenance from every operating budget. So that's something that I'm actually very much looking forward to.
And it's important for everybody to know we're looking at 3 different potential ways of doing this. One is the lease to buy. One is the vendor finances everything, and then they take a portion of the revenue until it's paid for. And the third option is that we pay for it outright. And so that's really looking at all of that, and then looking at the user's fees and what we can use the revenue for. That is why we just need one meeting, and hopefully it will be extremely soon, just on the financing of this whole project.
Thank you. That was the brunt of my questions, centered around cost and revenue. So I will wait.
Roy, did you want to get your questions in?
No, at this point, I know nothing as far as the cost. You know, except Ina said we could bring in potentially millions of dollars to repair the roads and stuff like that. You know, anybody's happy to hear millions of dollars. The question is, you know, how realistic is that? And so, you know, the best thing to do is just wait.
Okay, thanks, Roy. John, did you have any questions or insights in preparation for the next presentation?
Possibly. So we talked about the 3 potential models, you know, revenue sharing, you know, lease to own, or just buy outright. But in addition to that, there is the management, all the backside management of the system that's going on, the tracking of everything. There's obviously, how is the model structured for the vendor to make their revenue? In other words, is it a flat fee for the management of the system? Do you take a share of the parking revenue?
That's what we're going to be looking at.
So that's still to be determined.
Yeah, because we don't have those numbers. So that is something that we have to look at. And I understand what you're saying. That's why we have 3 different models and what goes into each model.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I guess we'll get that at the financial meeting.
Liz, did you have any comments?
No, I just want to thank everyone for their great work. From the, Mr. McNally, please relay my gratitude to the staff. I know that you've been working on this for quite a while. And I just want to acknowledge former Councilman Mike DeLaurie for pushing us to get this done. Thank you.
And Karen, I'd like to thank Donna for putting this proposal up on the website before the meeting so people could follow along with it and actually, announcing what the issue was that we were going to discuss tonight. I think it's a great step forward, and I think a lot of people appreciate it. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Roy. And we're taking this and trying to do our best to make sure that we get the public notified of what we're doing in a more timely fashion. So I will make sure I take that back to the team.
Okay.
I just had a few financial comments in closing. Although it was mentioned that, the funds from this proposal could go to improve parking, I just want to make sure everyone is painfully aware that we need additional revenue sources just to keep afloat. So let's keep that in mind that, we can't be pie in the sky here. We have to get additional revenue sources. And the Financial Restructuring Board was absolutely clear over 2 years ago that for a financially distressed municipality, you don't really have a choice not to install the parking meters at this point. In their report, again, they mentioned at least 600,000 in revenue based on the annual revenue based on their projections. So we're not talking peanuts here. So this is something that we really pleased that we're forging ahead on. I also want to ask or request that in the financial analysis, each scenario takes into consideration the vendor component where they're saying that they will fully maintain the system, for example, for 5 years and then hand it over. So it's, while it's well and good that it looks like it's quote unquote free for the 5 years, there is a cost in the out years. So, I really would like to see the projections, which Ina alluded to, is that if the vendor hands it over to us, there will still be annual software maintenance costs. So that's something that, we need to be mindful of. And also, you mentioned the 4 specials. Those are incremental hires for the system that are projected right now, but there will also be time for current employees to monitor the system. And it would be important to make sure that we allocate the percentages of some of the staff's time to maintain this system so that we get a really full projection of what this system will cost and what it will bring in. I'd also like to make sure that we get some feedback or comments from the staff on the other municipalities that you've interviewed for this process. Some of the highlights, maybe even posted on the website, such as Rockville Center, so that, people can see that, the system works and it is beneficial for us. In closing, I'd just like again to thank everyone for their hard work on this project. This is really important. And again, it's just a milestone for us that we are moving forward. So thank you, everyone. And John, you want to close? John McNally, you want to close?
All good. Thank you. We continue to forge ahead. I have COVID brain, so I am not at this stage of the game. Thank you all for hanging. I know this was supposed to be something of a 30,000 foot, but we were more at like 50 feet. So thank you for the engagement and the questions, and everybody taking time out tonight to learn more about this, because it really is. It's critical for the city moving forward. So thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.